Good morning. Well, I asked myself that. Well, I was sitting there wondering what the title was going to be. It just kind of came right through the window, and the three words. I said, okay. Good morning. It's always good to be here, and I'm always glad to hear Reverend Harris's voice on the other side of the phone and know that it's an opportunity to share what I've been reading, what I've been experiencing, always seeking. And in these days of Advent, we are being filled with anticipation that Christ is coming. And back in the days before he was born, there was many stories about a special person that was coming. And so people were sharing, people were just hoping, because they were in a place where they were struggling. They wanted to be free. They wanted to live in a culture, in a community where they could be safe. But it wasn't so at that time. And so his people were just really praying about this vision or this dream that a man was coming. On my way to Winter Rock the other day and having a chance to be a passenger, I was thinking of the title, Stones, Raindrops, and Snowflakes. And when you look across the country, wherever you're driving to, and even within your home, you're going to look for symbolism. You're going to see things. And as I'm sitting there looking around, instead of always thinking about dualism, I'm thinking in threes: mountains, valleys, and plains. These are all within my eyesight. Eagles, hawks, and bluebirds. Shadows, skies, and clouds. Crows, pigeons, and finch. Pinon, pine, and cedar. Signs, fencing, junk cars. Hogans, houses, trailers. So I think, wow, I'm looking and thinking, I can put three things together and start to look. Four-legged relatives, relatives of the air, relatives who live in Mother Earth, and of course, us two-legged, all God's creation. Among all of this, we find ourselves on a journey home, where we came from and where we're going. I just recently read a book titled Jesus by Deepak Chopra, an Indian author and spiritual director and teacher. He states that there isn't much written about the life of Jesus as he grew from adolescence into childhood. So Deepak decided to write what he thought happened to Jesus in those silent years. He puts Jesus in a very rural and pioneered way of life. No modern conveniences, no paved roads, no transportations, no cellular phones. A hard life, we might call it today. And so I'm reading, I'm thinking that Jesus probably didn't have any idea about modern conveniences. He has no idea about cell phones. He has no idea about 4-lane highways and wonderful SUVs down the roads, He's just walking. His path is to find a well-worn path that he could walk on, so that his feet wouldn't get bruised, his feet wouldn't get cut, he wouldn't have to worry about scratches and all the aches and pains that go with walking on dirt roads. This was the life he lived. And as I continue to think of living out on the reservation and hearing stories from my grandparents, it also takes me back to our visits from the Healing Circle where I work we take relatives, and as most of you know who have heard me, I work with people who are in recovery from alcoholism, substance abuse, and those with mental health issues. And so we take a group of our relatives up into Tenetra, Largo Canyon. And that's the place where our grandparents returned to after they were freed from Fort Sumner. And this is the place where we were incarcerated after we did the long walk. And so we came out of there in 1868, and that's the first place they went to reestablish their homes. And so we take our relatives there to give them an idea of how we lived back then. We still see the stone-built homes way on top of the mesas. If you've ever been in that canyon, there are layers of mesas and there are canyons. And so way in the back, you're going to see homes built on top of the mesas. We visited some. I've been in one, and there are these little square windows. And they're built strategically where you can see up the valleys or wherever you want it to. And I imagine that they were looking for soldiers, they were looking for conquistadors, they were looking for Apaches or the Ute tribes, enemies that were going to come. And I'm thinking, well, how did they keep themselves warm? How did they, I imagine it's cooler in the summertime, but in the wintertime, perched way up there in the wind. And when you go inside, you can see darkened places where the fires were and where they probably cooked, and the log beams are still up, and some have been given some care by the Bureau of Land Management so that you can see the whole building intact. And so I'm thinking, very much like probably even before that, Jesus lived in such a place. And Deepak writes about how he traveled. There were no hotels, but there were places where people who travel had fixed, and they were little concaved, maybe little caves or bushes where they would put remnants and maybe leaves and stuff they could sleep on. And so when you're traveling and it gets dark, you find one of those places. And Deepak talks about the stench of those little places, because people sleep there, they leave whatever, and they go on. And it's like not like when you check into a Marriott, you know, you have certain expectations. And if those aren't met, man, you're going to go and make that right for yourself. But Jesus did that. And I'm thinking to myself, our expectation of our Lord Jesus Christ is so different. We look at this beautiful picture of him coming, of him being our Savior, of him doing everything miraculously. And as Deepak is talking about Jesus, sometimes I have tears coming down. And I'm thinking how closely related we are in our struggles. Because Deepak also talks about how Jesus did not know that he was the Son of God. He struggled with why people were calling him weird. He struggled when somebody would come up to him and say, "Master." And he'd say, "I'm not your master. What are you talking about?" And so he was on a journey. And this is the journey that Deepak talks about. The self-doubt. He doubted he was anyone special. He knew there was something about him, but he couldn't find it. He didn't understand that. And so as he traveled, he met people. And they came from many different religions. And so they would talk to him about their beliefs. They would talk about him, and they would say stories that there's a man coming. Do you happen to know that man? Do you know anything about him? And so, but Jesus kept traveling. He walked and walked and walked. And it's just kind of really put me right next to how it might have been. And some of you know that I lost my home a year and a half ago to a flash flood. And so my husband and I have been living in a trailer without electricity or water. And sometimes it really gets to me because I'm tired. I'm tired of, packing up my water and taking it in. And so I'm thinking, this is just temporary. And yet Jesus had a lifetime from the time he was 13 to age 33 that he had to survive. And what happened to him, how he lived, who helped him. He didn't really have a job because he was on a journey. He depended on others. And so I'm thinking, he didn't one day say, I'm tired of this, let me go check in someplace or let me go rent someplace. He didn't do that. He didn't have that convenience to do that. And so Deepak writes about Jesus as a young seeker from Nazareth on his path to Christhood. The path from suffering and separation to bliss and unity. And on this path he is taken into the everyday scheme of things. He worries about the violence. He worries about the unrest. He wonders if God is listening. He's intensely absorbed in the question, who am I? And I think as we journey personally, we're always asking. We want to hear the voice of God as clearly as I'm talking right now. We want that direction directly to us. And it doesn't happen. It didn't happen for Jesus either. And so sometimes he would meet people who would look at him funny. Others called him weird and they say, stay clear of him. But he also heard about the Jews waiting for a special person. Deepak doesn't want to contradict what is written in scriptures, but rather tries to put light on how Jesus lived within his society. And there are also many questions. Did Jesus know how to read? How educated in the Torah was he? Did he live apart from the Roman culture, or was he living as a part of it? There are questions today. Sometimes I get myself in trouble and I say, I have no problem with the fact that Jesus might have been married and that Jesus had children. I love that. How would you experience the full humanness if that's what God wanted him to be here on earth? To experience what it means to be human, to me, is procreating. So how can you leave that out and expect someone to be human? I don't know, that's just my interpretation, but to know that Jesus could have been married, had children, experienced fatherhood, the joy that it brings, to have a wife, someone who he loved, to express his emotions, to express his love for another human being, to express his love for his children. I would love to have known that that was written in the Bible, but it's not. People allude to it, but it's not written there. And then they talk about Mary Magdalene and what her role was in the life of Jesus. Again, there, people want to cut that out. But Jesus is a forgiving person. Forgiving. And we can talk about forgiveness till the sun goes down and up again, but forgiveness is real. And that is a part of his loving us, is to forgive us. I'm also reading another book on shadows. That the shadows that we have to deal with in our personal lives, the secrets that we have, the facade that we put up, to be truthful with yourself. Jesus and Creator doesn't care about that. He loves and he forgives. Unconditional love, we also have problems with. Our Lord Jesus forgave us. Our God forgives us. There's no conditions to it. And so we can have another whole discussion on that. Somebody said, well, he forgave Hitler, he forgave Charles Manson. And they're pretty hard concepts to deal with. Is how can God forgive these types of people? But do we believe that there is really unconditional love? Unconditional. Nothing stands in the way. And it doesn't say that you have to ask for forgiveness. To me, that love is right there. And it doesn't, for me, I still have some problems with that. And the Holocaust that happened, the world that we live in today, everybody wanting to kill everybody. The incident that happened in Aztec. So needless, but it happens. And yet, where would God be in the forgiveness part of that? So it's really, when you start talking about your shadows, it's just like peeling away all those onion skins until you get to the truth. And I think today, even our government, if they were truthful, our Congress, if they were truthful, they wouldn't have so much people voicing against what's happening today. As he traveled, as Jesus traveled, he met many people of many religious faith, had many, many conversations. As he traveled, he met a Persian man who asked him, "What do you seek, brother?" Jesus replied, "Myself." The Persian laughed and said, "How do you know you didn't leave that at home?" "I didn't," Jesus said. The Persian told him that he was rich. He said, "I don't need to trade anymore. I've got enough to just take it easy and enjoy my life." But he said, "I heard that there's a great mother in Ephesus who has 1,000 breasts. I want to kneel before her," he said. Jesus asked, "Why?" The Persian said, "Because I don't want to die before finding God." Jesus said, "How do you know you didn't leave him at home?" The Persian was amused, and he wanted to know more about Jesus, so he asked, "If you won't tell me that, at least tell me why you left." Jesus answered, "It's hard to explain. I'm not walking away from anything. I'm not walking toward anything." And that really captured my attention. I thought, wow. We're not walking toward anything. We're not walking toward anything. We're not coming from anything. We're just here. And that's why God says, I am here. I am with you. If God is everywhere, he cannot be lost, nor can he be found. And yet I must travel, said Jesus. I said to myself, whoa. And I began to have real reactions to what I was reading. I sat there, tears in my eyes, and thinking about Jesus and how he must have felt alone so many times as he tried to settle with this inner feeling. A feeling that kept him walking, a feeling that kept him searching, seeking, listening, looking, through conversations, through signs. I quietly thought of all the places I went to seek answers, wanting to hear a Creator's voice, the direction, a prayer to be answered. Hear or see some spiritual signs. Have you been on that journey? As I was reading the 3 symbolism before I started, and all of those things, I think we can find something that begins to help us. It's very easy to tell someone to go meditate, to go read, to talk to somebody who will give us some direction. But it's within us. Jesus was born on earth and lived on earth. And at Christmas, we acknowledge that miracle birth without being faithful to the times and location into which Jesus was born. And as I said before, it sounds like a pretty picture with all the decorations, and the Advent season is to prepare for the one that's coming, who will journey on earth, and we know what's going to happen to him. And I think in Jesus' walk, he also had that feeling that he wasn't going to live very long. But yet, no one came to him and said, this is your time span. Just as we sit here today, we're told all we have is this moment, for sure. This is it. We can count on it. We can walk out that door and we might go home. We don't know. And so Jesus was on his journey looking. And we need to know that to embrace Jesus' humanness and to embrace him in that part of his life. Creator is everywhere in the stone. Our Mother Earth is a big old stone. In the raindrops, Mother Earth, we're told, is mostly water. And the snowflakes that come in countless shapes and all sizes, all depths and different pictures that we imagine. And it's to validate our ideas. How many ideas do we have in a day? It's that creativity that's within us. I see that as the snowflakes. Countless, countless. And also, it's the uniqueness of all creation. Everything is different. And we look around, and humans, us special people, not two of us look alike. Not two of us. Some of us might look like Russell Crowe. Some of us might look like Sandra Bullock. But we have like little smidgens of, our eyes might look that way, our nose might, I have a granddaughter, and I tell her, I say, you look like Angelina Jolie because of some parts of her features. But no two persons look alike. And isn't that unique? And that, to me, that's the way the snowflakes are. No two are alike. And so that's how I thought of the three words, or it came to me. And I'm thinking, wow. So in closing, because of our journey, we encounter obstacles in many ways. And me struggling with the denominational hierarchy because of the way I believe, I've often called myself sometimes a recovering Christian. And yet I tell people I'm a Jesus follower, completely. And I think as I read this book, I feel I've come even closer to understanding who Jesus is in my life. And Jesus had doubts, he searched, and he wanted so much to hear God validate him. But as we continue to seek and travel, may this be the season that Jesus comes to you, and that you can really hear that inner voice. I wish that for you, and I wish you a Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year. Thank you.